people lived loud and proud, and they weren't wasting time with their life. And now I look back at it, I'm like, I wasted 20 something years. And, I think I waited for the right time. If I didn't have my friends that I had in Hazard, and if I didn't move like away, I'd probably still be straight. Who knows? And it just takes guts and courage. And, eventually I just did it.
That's Dakota Makres. I'm Buddy Forbes, and this is Queerly Quilted. Now, there were some audio issues with the recording of this podcast, but hopefully you can overlook those and just focus on the story of my friend and former coworker. I am working to find some better ways to do these recordings, especially when it has to be a remote recording. But until then, really it's just about getting the stories out there. Talk to me a little bit about growing up and what that was like for you.
Very Southern Baptist. Went to church every Sunday night, Wednesday. Like I guess, a conservative household. Mom and dad married my entire life. They're always, I like to sometimes say helicopter parents still to this day. Very involved with their children's lives, which, not a bad thing at all. Very supportive, always come to my school events. High school graduation was the biggest thing ever. And then, you graduate with your bachelor's, and that's the biggest thing ever. So I hate to see when I graduate with my master's, what that's going to be like. But no, two very loving, supporting parents, a sister. We did everything together, yearly vacations. We used to have season passes to Dollywood that we bought, like, I forget for how many years. I didn't have to want for anything. Whatever I wanted, it was there. So I had like a really good upbringing in childhood. So I can't complain there.
So when did you start realizing your sexuality?
That's hard. That's difficult. Not really middle school, maybe early high school, maybe. I had one girlfriend in middle school. Does that really count? It was like sixth grade. Hope she's doing well. But like I never really dated anyone, and like all my best friends are girls, and like just like never really found like, I think women are beautiful, very beautiful. I just was never attracted to them. Um, so maybe high school, and then college, I was like, oh, okay, okay, maybe I like guys. Never, acted on it. I was still very, because I lived at home, did not live on campus, and I went to the community college for 2 years and transferred to UT. So I did that, but like I never really acted on it. And then I moved to Hazard, and that's a whole different story. I graduated and I moved to Hazard, Kentucky, and it's like I was telling myself a lie. It was like, I told our good friend Camille Gear, like, oh yeah, I'm going to marry a woman, and have a family. She didn't call my bluff then, but she called it later. So actually, when you're on TV, people message you a lot. Especially, when you're anchoring the morning news, you're seen by a lot of people. And this one person messaged me in particular and asked me to go to, I think it was like a haunted house or something. And I was like, no. I was in denial. I was like, no, like, I'm good. Like, I'm so busy. I can't step away from work. And they're like, oh, okay. So I told Camille that, and she's like, Dakota, just go, just go. And at that time, I didn't, come out to her. She's like, just go, just make friends. Other people than, people at the station, just make friends. So never went, never went. But did hang out with that person, and I was like, oh, why do I have feelings for this person? Somebody I never I don't even know. Like we didn't, we didn't really go on dates. We just like hung out and watched like Netflix. Um, and I was like, oh, this is who I am. And I then, you know, became me. And, you know, and the first person I ever told was our bestest friend, Evan Hatter. We were actually making a futon. We're building a futon. Can you imagine Evan and I building a futon?
I
Um,
cannot.
and I just like, we were doing stuff, and I just like told him, I was like, Evan, yeah, like, I like guys. And he's like, okay. He was like, well, he's like, well, thank you for telling me. He was very supportive. I was like, just don't tell anybody. Just keep it to ourselves, and let me just do my own thing. And so one day, I think it was in June, like it was like a Pride month, and I just texted in our group chat with, I think it was at the time, I think it was Courtney. I think Alec may have already left Hazard at that time, so it might have just been Courtney, Evan, Camille and me. I was like, hey guys, I was like, hey, like, I like guys, the girl thing ain't really working out. And, of course, they were all ecstatic. Um, and then Camille got me that same night, she got me a cake and she said she bought every color of frosting at Food City and just wrote on the cake. And then I had to tell her, Evan was the first person I told. And she was like, what do you mean? She said, she was like, I knew you weren't, I knew you weren't straight. I just don't want to say anything. And then, because she's like, that's not my place to be like, Dakota, you're gay.
Right.
But, she was real supportive. And then, like, talking to people at the station, they're like, Dakota, we knew. We just weren't going to say anything because that wasn't our place. But they said the moment you walked through the door, we knew. I was like, is that noticeable? Um, but yeah, so that's sort of my story. It wasn't really as dramatic, I guess, as some people. Some people have really hard coming outs. And I was just like, this is me. I did tell my parents over text message though.
Right.
Maybe I shouldn't have, but I texted my dad. I was like, hey, like, I just want to let you know. He was like, okay, I love you, blah, 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 blah. And then my mom texted me. She's like, do you have something to tell me? I was like, no, girl, what's going on? Like, what? and, and then I was like, yeah, like, it's just like, I can't, I don't know, like, I just can't date women. I've tried, I just can't do it. And they're like, okay. So, you know, um, I've only brought like my boyfriend now currently around them. They seem to like him. He likes them, so it's a very cordial thing. It's not like, don't bring him over, blah blah blah. No.
Right.
I'm like, mom, Danny's coming over, is that fine? Like, but he doesn't come over that often. But like if we're having like a family dinner or something where my sister's going to come over, I'll invite him if he can come over. But everybody's cordial. It's whatever. I told him it's like it's my life. You've lived yours. I'm living mine now.
Right.
And I think, at the end of the day, everybody deserves who they want to be with. Um, and that's just what I told them. And that's that. I don't entertain any other conversations with anybody, that may have a different opinion. I might say, well, we can agree to disagree, but that's about it.
So was there ever really any concern with, your upbringing and with the area in general about just saying out loud, this is me?
Yeah. I think being on TV on the role I had, I was two different people. Um, I feel like Hannah Montana. I was, I had to be like very matter of fact with the news and, cut up here and there. But, people have told me like, Dakota, if the viewers didn't know that you're gay, like all they had to do was just watch your TV. All they had to do was watch your show. I talked about Dolly Parton all the time. Winona Judd, named my cat after her, mannerisms, whatever. And no one ever approached me about it. I no one ever approached me about it. No viewer ever did. But I think Hazard really was so welcoming and inviting, and the people I hung around with, um, they don't care if you're straight, gay, bi, whatever. You're a person. We're all humans. And Hazard's such a small town. Nobody that I knew. I never heard a single negative thing about. Oh well, Dakota, he's dating a guy. They're like, bring him over, let's go downtown, let's go drink, like give him the Hazard experience, and they're like, bring Danny to the Derby party, bring him, because the Derby party is a big thing in Hazard, and I was sort of scared at the beginning, because I'm like, well, this could be a career-ending thing if people complain about it, because that's happened to people, um, and I didn't want a career-ending event when I just started it, when I fought so hard to get to that anchor desk. As we all know, I fought tooth and nail for it.
You did. You did.
I fought it. I earned it. And I was like, this is not going to take me down. And so I just embraced it. I was like, you know what? I don't think station management cared. Um, Nobody brought it up to me. Um, if anything, I just got said, tone down the laughter. You're having too much fun. Tone it down, son. Um, but and I think in Eastern Kentucky, I think it depends on where you are, because you have places like Hazard, London, if you want to consider that Eastern Kentucky, Pikeville. They're growing as communities. We have Pikeville Pride. That's got backlash from people, but more often than not, more people are defending it than are against it, I think. So I never really was worried. And again, I think it's about who you run around with, who your friends are. Like, Marianne or you, like, y'all are just welcoming. Um, Marianne was like one of the first people I met at YMT because when I worked on weekends, she worked on weekends. And that girl, she knew it. She knew it, but she wasn't going to say anything. Um, but again, and I think if you've grown up in Eastern Kentucky, your story's different than my story. I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee. You know, nobody cares. It's a welcoming community. It's not, it's such a progressive city, I think. But Eastern Kentucky is still so true to those traditional values, those traditional Christian values. Man and woman are married. You're going to have kids. You're going to get married, and you don't leave Eastern Kentucky. And I think the people that leave Eastern Kentucky and then come back have a different mindset. If they move to Lexington or maybe Cincinnati, then they come back. I'm all about coming back home, especially in Eastern Kentucky. You need that. And they grow to have a different mindset. And they may have grown up with, being gay is wrong, but then they come back and it's a whole different, they bring such a whole different atmosphere to, you know, sexuality, to somebody's sexuality. I went to Lexington Pride one year, the great best thing ever. I saw people from Eastern Kentucky there. We talked, we laughed, we had fun, and we went on our way. You know, and I think more and more that's maybe coming into Eastern Kentucky. But I think I have a really hard time with people who, you know, I we've talked, we've confided, and they told me about their sexuality, but they're still so scared to come out because of those norms. And I'd tell them like, listen, I know it's hard. I had to do it. I was raised Southern Baptist. I said, be yourself. I said, you cannot live a lie because, you're going to live, maybe you come out at 65. Well, you've lived 65 years without being you. You've had to hide it. And I just couldn't do that. I was like, I'm not doing this, loud and proud. But yeah, I don't think for me it was that difficult, but I've definitely seen some people in Eastern Kentucky really struggle with that. And I think, Buddy, maybe you were one of them. I watched you. I don't know if it was a struggle, maybe. You know, we've had our conversations, you and me. And I think you were, I don't know if maybe you were scared to disappoint people, but you finally did it. And that was really I felt so happy for you that day. And, of course I knew, I was like, I knew it, I knew it. But, people like coming out on your own time, your own truth. And to me, what I see, I feel like your family embraces it. I see the Facebook comments from your family when you post a picture with your boyfriend, and it's all so positive.
Right.
And I think, for people like you, your family may have been indifferent at first, but they come around. And I think, if anybody from Eastern Kentucky is going to listen to this, I told myself my family's either, they're going to be around or they're not, which they are around. But there's a lot of people that their families just don't want nothing to do with them. And, even people's friends. I'm like, well, then you don't need those people in your lives. If that's what it's going to be like, then they've never been in your corner if they can't support you during this phase in your life. I don't think being gay is a choice, because it's something I battled with. My thing is like, who wants to like a man? Men are miserable sometimes.
Preach.
And I'm like, why do I want to do this to myself? But at the end of the day, you got to do it, because you see these actors come out, 65 years. Take Caitlyn Jenner for instance. She transitioned at in her late 60s. She lived her whole life a lie, and I just like I said earlier, couldn't be me.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so impressive about how old were you?
In my early, let's see, I'm 27 now. I was maybe 23-ish, 22, 23-ish around that time.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I waited until I was 30, so.
Yeah, but like, it's like, like I had a good friend in middle school and high school. He's gay. He was gay. Everybody knew it. And I'm like, you know what? Good for him not waiting. Good for him. And when you're in middle school, everybody's went through middle school. That's not a good time to, that's just an awful time to come out because you're going to be bullied. High school people really don't really care. Like senior year, we're worried about going to college. We don't care if you're gay, straight, whatever.
Right.
That I knew people in high school that were gay. Okay, cool. same, but like, I'm not going to tell you that, but like, people live loud and proud, and they weren't wasting time with their life. And now I look back at it, I'm like, I wasted 20 something years, but and maybe I waited for, the right, I think I waited for the right time. If I didn't have my friends that I had in Hazard, and if I didn't move like away, I, I'd probably still be straight. Who knows?
Right.
And it just takes guts and courage, and eventually I just did it.
Well, you were able to create community, and that's one of the common things that I'm hearing as I talk to people is the importance of being able to not only create that, but be that for other people as well. And I think a large part of what I want to do with this podcast is show kids who are where we were that out proud people exist in this region, and you may be gay from this region. That doesn't make you any different than anyone else. Appalachians who are queer are Appalachians.
Right, right.
And I think we've seen a lot over, I mean, you think back to the Tyler Childers music video, and I keep going back to that with people because, coal miners can't be gay. Yes, they easily can.
Oh, they certainly can be. And when that music video came out, it was such a testament to who Tyler Childers is. I actually, I think one of his keyboardists was part of our community, and he shouted him out. He gave him a shout out on stage when I went to see him in Louisa a couple of years ago. And, he's like, he's loud and proud, he's living his truth. And I think more people like Tyler Childers who have such an, what do you call it? Like such a stage, uh, I think more and more kids will see that and be like, you know what? It's all right. You know, I don't make being gay my whole personality. It's just, it's just who I am. My personality is I'm a former news anchor who still lives in those glory days. Who, that's my only personality is I was a news anchor. But no, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a cat dad. Being gay is just part of you, but like it doesn't have to consume you. Um, and I mean, I have no problem with people who make it their whole personality, like be you, queen. But you know, if people are scared that it's going to change their whole personality and change who they are as a person, if anything, it makes you better because you are going to be more welcoming to people. I think I've interviewed people who were very much part of our community, and I actually confided in them. I was like, what was it like when you came out? And they were like, oh, like it was simple, or it was difficult or simple, or like they just didn't care. That it was just who they are. And I hope the kids that listen to this know that there's always going to be somebody in your corner. Um, they could be straight, gay, whatever. Like Marianne, she is the biggest supporter of anybody I know. She loves a drag queen. She loves straight people. It doesn't matter. If you find people like that who will support you and lift you up, I think you got it made. And I think there is such a stigma in Appalachia, be that coal miner, be that man's man. No. I mean, kudos to every coal miner because that is such back-breaking work, but that's not for me. And I can tell you, there are gay coal miners, but they just can't come out because of what they do for their job. Or there are some that probably are out that, live their truth, and they may have coworkers that just are like don't care. And I think sometimes you can clock somebody on their sexuality, like they walk in the door, oh, they're gay, or oh, they're very straight, And at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that just live their lives. They go home to their wife or they go home to their husband, and that's that. But yeah, I feel sorry for the kids that can't come out. I mean, and I've had, like I told you, I've had people confide in me about like, how'd you do it? I'm like, I'm on TV, so it was very difficult because I didn't want the pitchforks coming and coming to me. They didn't, and maybe I just made a welcoming environment on TV, and people just knew it. I never said it out loud because I didn't feel it was necessary. I didn't need to say, "Hi, good morning, I'm gay." Didn't need to say that. But yeah, and I'm really glad that you did this podcast. I think I was like maybe one of the first people that messaged you like, put me on.
Absolutely.
Sleeves rolled up, put me on. And I don't know how many other people you have interviewed. And I hope they're saying the same things I am, like, the community aspect. And I know you've had stories where you've interviewed people who are gay, or you've you know Pikeville Pride or anything like that. Like, they're hard stories to
Mhm.
do. They're very hard, because you're telling such a delicate story. But at the end of the day, when that person texts you like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much," that's what it's about.
Right. Well, I think that's the most important thing, is sharing the stories, which obviously is why I'm doing this to begin with. And it does put you in a very kind of a vulnerable situation, not only to try to tell your story to someone, but then to take what they've told you and share it with other people, which is why I think a lot of people are a little weary about doing a podcast like this, because, you're trusting me with what you're saying and then expecting it to come out the other end the same way. And in many different forms of telling stories, that's not how it happens. So I understand, like, there's a lot of people who don't want to get that vulnerable for something like this. So I do appreciate you talking to me and sharing, your version of the same story that everyone else has, because we all have very similar pieces to this story, but it's different for everyone.
hmm And I think one of the big things is you don't need to rush your coming out, because it's such a personal and vulnerable thing. Um, because you tell people in your own way. And I never support anyone who outs someone, um, you know, unless I don't even know if it can be purely an accident. I think if you out someone, there's so much malice to that.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes it may purely just be accidental. And I think that's when you sit down with that person and say, "Hey, like, I don't appreciate what you did. Like, this is my story to tell. This is the chapter in my book, and I'll close it when I want to close it."
Hmm.
And I think the kids that listen to this, or not even kids, let's say someone who's 30 or 40 or 50 that listen to this, come out on your own time. If it's your family, sit them down and be like, "Listen, this is who I am. Support me or not." I had a conversation with people, and they're like, "Well, I can't come out because of my family." And I'm like, "Well, what's their issue?" Like, they're like, "Well, they just don't agree with it." Okay. And that's my thing. Like, I know you don't want to like you don't want to disappoint your family, but you're disappointing yourself. And one thing about Dakota Makres is he's not going to make himself miserable. I'll make others miserable before I make myself miserable. So, and you got to look out for yourself at the end of the day. Buddy, with you, like, I could see it in you. Like, I could see like there's something off with him. Like, he's been very cryptic on Facebook, or on like he's posting all these quotes. And I know you love a quote.
Oh
To
yeah.
that point, it's like he's being so cryptic. I'd come into the bureau if I had a story, and we talk, but like it wasn't really. To me, I just felt like you were scared. Like, oh my god, is Dakota going to ask me if I'm gay? Like, is he going to bring it up? Like, that's how I felt, because you were just. I don't know if you were so focused on your work, like you wanted to get it done,
Mhm.
or because I
Mhm.
just felt like our conversations just got like less and less. Like, I don't know. I think you were just going through so much mentally. I think, if that makes
Right.
sense. Um, and I never was gonna be like, "Buddy, are you gay?" Never. Even though I wanted to, because investigative journalism. Um, but for you, I don't want to speak for you, but like I just felt like it was very cryptic. And then when you came out, it was like sunshine and rainbows over you. Your whole personality changed, your whole mood changed. You seemed so much happier. You seemed happier at work because you finally let that burden
Mhm.
go. You
Mhm.
had so much on your shoulders, and it is such a weight to carry, because every day you wake up thinking, is this the day, or is someone going to see me eating dinner with this person, and then question, because living in a small town, people, their tongues
Right.
wag.
Right.
Um, and I was like, I can't live like this. I extended my contract, not living like this for 3 or however many years. Um, and I think for someone like you who's not going to leave home, Appalachia is your home. Um, you
Mhm.
just did it, and now you have all these more wonderful years ahead of you with your boyfriend. Hopefully, y'all get married. If he's going to listen to this, you better put a ring on that.
But no, you're right. I mean, I was in a very dark place before I came out, because for me, it came down to, we were covering a lot of heavy stuff for years, like bam, bam, bam. And it just kept reminding me of, how short life is. And I was watching all of these people at young ages just die,
And
never having lived the rest of their lives, the rest of their career. And I just kept thinking, why? Why would I not just be truthful about this one thing that I don't really have a problem with? Like, it was a lot of internal stuff for me. So yeah, I was probably very much in a darker place around that time. I was never afraid that anyone was going to ask me, because I would have just lied and said no. I mean, my entire childhood, I grew up being outed before I even knew what it meant, you know. So, but I would have just lied and been like, no.
Right. Well, I think if you're a reporter, someone in news, you do, like you said, you realize how short life is. When I'm reading on the teleprompter, so and so at the age of 20 was killed in a car crash. For us, we just glance by it like that's just another day. But that's someone's life, and they weren't done with their life. If anything, at that young age, your life is just beginning. And what if that person, didn't get to live their truth? And I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to be that person that dies at 27, not living who they are. And such a good point. Life is too short. Life is way too short for all that.
If you were to look back at young Dakota, and I know that you've kind of already said that you feel like you probably waited until the right point for you, but if you were to look back at young Dakota and talk to him about who you are now,
I feel like I have lived my life putting myself last and putting others first, and this is the first thing I put myself at the forefront of. I made this big decision for myself, and I think young Dakota would be proud, saying, "Yes, Queen, you better work." But I don't know if young Dakota would understand. Maybe high school Dakota would understand, but middle school and elementary school Dakota, no. Well, elementary school, I didn't really know. Middle school, probably. Middle school, middle school Dakota would not know. I can tell you that. But high school Dakota for sure would know, because it was such a weight in high school too. I was lying about who I was, and now looking back, I've almost graduated from high school for 10 years. I know I don't look like it, but and I think I'd be proud of myself.
so what would you say to him?
What would I say to him? I would say, oh my gosh, why would you ask me that? I would say, good job. I would say, you found out who you were or are. You always knew it, but you finally voiced. And I would just tell him, good job. I would. And that's all I would say to him, and move on. Because I think that's all I could say to him. Because, like I said, high school Dakota still wouldn't probably understand, but he kind of would, if that makes sense. But yeah, I would just tell him, good job. You found out who you are. Now live it, girl.
And when I say queer Appalachia, what does that bring to your mind?
A community of people who are so much alike, more than they're different. You know, to me, I walk up to a gay person, they're a human. Everyone is a human, especially in the queer community. It's important to know you're a human. At the end of the day, you're a human. You deserve to be who you want to be, or who you are. You deserve that love, regardless if it's, your love's coming from a man or from a woman. You deserve that love, just like anybody else. And to me, it's a community that is so diverse. And I think that's what makes it strong, is the diversity. When one person in the queer community is attacked, we're all attacked.
So how important do you think it is to normalize for people that queer is just simply part of Appalachia? It's not a different subset. It's just simply part of the entire community.
It's just part of life, I think. I think it's important, because if you're recognizing two straight people getting married, you need to recognize two gay people getting married, or, it's just a part of life. And unfortunately, if you're still in the times of before, thinking conservatively, I say catch up, because it's happening, and there's really nothing you can do to stop it, I don't think. People, I don't think my relationship with God has changed or anything. We're still talking. So,
I'm going to have a whole conversation about church and how that fits in with everything later on. But, that is a lot of baggage for a lot of people. So I'm definitely going to have a whole podcast just for that in general. I might bring you back for that if you're interested.
Of course, buddy. What do you think with Buddy Forbes? Of course.
But I thank you so much for your time and for talking to me and just for who you are.
Yeah. buddy, I appreciate you. You've been a really big supporter, and you're such a good friend to everyone, and you're always in everybody's corner, and I love that about you. So.
Now, if you need someone in your corner or just someone to share your story with, queerly.quilted on Instagram, Queerly Quilted on Facebook, queerlyquiltedpodcast@gmail.com. That's how you can reach me. If you enjoy the podcast and you want to share it with other people, make sure to rate and subscribe on whatever platform you use. Those numbers really go a long way in sharing with other people what we're doing here. If you want to share your story but you're not ready to do that out loud, this is still a place for you. You can send anonymous emails to queerlyquiltedpodcast@gmail.com. But until then, you are loved, you are needed, you are important, you are queerly quilted.